Let's start the show by talking about my sponsor, Paloma Verde, and their new website, palomaverdecbd.com. Head over to palomaverdecbd.com and check them out for all of your CBD needs. They've got the gummies, tinctures, salves. So if you're needing anything to maybe chill you out, something to help you get mellowed out, something for your joint pain and stiffness, go over to palomaverdecbd.com and give them a check out. Carlos and Vanessa are awesome people. They run a great company. And if you enter the promo code FACTS at checkout, you'll get 25% off your order. Plus, any order over $75, you get free shipping. So, I don't know what you're waiting for. Head over to palomaverdecbd.com and check them out. Let's start the show. This episode will be completely taken out of context. Welcome to the Fact Check This podcast. So we'll just kind of play it by ear. Did you have anything in particular that you might want to talk about other than the orgies in front of kids?
Yeah, right. I don't know. I know we talked about making a list, and I did not make any kind of a list. So
that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. But that stuff was funny, man. Like, people just want to think the worst right away of everyone. Like, I can understand where things get miscommunicated in text because it's just how it is, you know, on posts and stuff. But people literally took like one comment someone made that could have been clarified a little more. But they were like, okay, this person totally supports having sex parties in front of children and doing and it's like, how do you even like go there from there? Like, she was talking about like at family-friendly nudist places or like in the locker room. So if another child sees you changing in the locker room, are you a pedophile now? Like, people are just taking it to the most extreme version, and it's just so dumb. And I don't understand like wanting to think the worst of people. I gotta take my gum out. Hold on.
See, we're kind of just doing like a cold open and going straight into it, but like, that's something that's crazy about social media is you get such extremes on both ends of it, because you will have the people that, you know, on the extreme left side of things that just think everything should be a free-for-all and wide open, which is, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit. But then at the same time, you have people that, you know, on the extreme conservative side of things that, you know, take that approach that even if you're happen to be in a locker room at a gym changing, that like that's offensive. I don't know how people's brains get so pushed to one side or the other that there's absolutely no nuance in like in the thought pattern whatsoever.
Yeah. It gets frustrating too, just because like good people are getting accused of things. It's like literally on Liberty Twitter, it's like a spinning wheel on who's gonna get like accused of being a pedophile today. Like, spin it? Whose turn is it? Like,
right? It's crazy. That's so I'm gonna let you kind of introduce yourself a little bit, but you know, we run in more or less the same circles on Liberty Twitter and the insane shit show that is on a daily basis. And I mean, it's a lot of fun, and I have had a lot of fun. I never had any use for Twitter prior to getting involved in all of this stuff. It was just something dumb that I would check once a week. And when I started getting involved with all the different podcasts and like doing the social media stuff for them and really doing like stuff on Twitter and engaging with Liberty Twitter, it was a lot of fun. And I started finding people that I like to talk to and engage with, and even have in some occasions gotten to meet in person in real life here over the last several months. So like, it's been a lot of fun. And but man, it has also opened me up to a world of like, I knew Twitter was a shit show, but there are some days that it's an impressive shit show. Like, I'm not even sure how people can do it quite so. Well, I mean, you're one of the ones that you kind of do it just like head first on a daily basis. So introduce yourself a little bit, since we really did go for like the cold open, and then how do you do Twitter every day like that? Because it can be, sometimes I just have to check out.
I don't know. I think maybe I have a narcissistic trait where I can like like I'm just like throwing all my thoughts out there all the time and like ignoring like I just don't like like that's why I got off of Facebook because like I hated personal like you couldn't even have discussions with people you even knew because it went to like this crazy level of like we gotta fight, you know, and it's like that's why I got Facebook and I've liked Twitter because you really can like if you don't want to see something or be involved with something, like you don't have to. You can just keep moving. I'm Forest Mommy, by the way. I was on Twitter. I actually started Twitter October 20 end of 2019 after I kept getting kicked off of Facebook. And then I don't even have Facebook anymore. So, and Twitter, like Twitter is for smart people. Let's just say it. Okay. Like smart people, Twitter. But I was noticing like my switch between Facebook and Twitter, there was stuff you would learn on Twitter that wouldn't even get to Facebook for like 2 or 3 weeks later. So I enjoyed that. I enjoy seeing things as it's happening. And I don't know, I just have so many thoughts in my head. And I actually am in person a more quiet person. I don't talk a lot, but there's a lot going on up here. So I just like, it's just a journal to me, I guess, in that sense. And then I've liked like Liberty Twitter, like you said, I've met so many people who are like my age into things I'm into that are like not judgmental and are totally open about things that they should be open about. And like it's just been going from like the super leftist on crap on Facebook to like Twitter where you can kind of socially be left or right and whatever, but as long as we hate the government, like we can all get along and like find common ground on that. So I like
Yeah.
Twitter for that.
Yeah, and I have noticed that as well. I guess because Twitter is it's a little more in the moment, and you know the size of your post is restricted with your character count and everything. So it's a little more soundbitey. Like the news hits really fast and really to the point. Whereas with Facebook really does have a lot more of the just the average day-to-day social interaction of people posting pictures of their kids and random other stuff and recipes and all kinds of stuff. And you know your Facebook friends list is probably going to be maybe more varied in that you're going to have a lot of people that you probably actually know or work with, and like you don't get a lot of the news type stuff. You get a lot of the day-to-day life type stuff, but you don't get the fast hitting news side of stuff that you like, hot takes and looking into that. And I do think, as odd as this sounds, I don't think Twitter is as hardcore with the censoring as Facebook is, because I'll post pretty much anything that I post to Twitter, I'll post to Facebook as well. And it'll get dinged a lot more frequently on Facebook than it does on Twitter. So for as crazy as it is when, you know, Twitter goes through and purges accounts and you see people dropping left and right and stuff like that, it does seem like Twitter is at least a little bit more of an open space that you can say stuff without necessarily having to worry about getting like, unless you just go completely nuts, you can be a little more out there with some stuff and get away with it.
I agree. It's nice. And it was just nice last year with all the shutdown stuff. Like these are thoughts I was really having. Like there is something terrible going on. There is something wrong going on. And I know if I had shared those thoughts on Facebook, I mean, I pretty much lost all my friends anyways. And when you're not on Facebook, you don't really exist anymore. I'm finding out. But regardless, like people were like, I mean, I have something like 11,000 followers right now. And I know these people, like, if I was totally off my rocker and totally everything I said was so stupid to make any sense, why would I have all those people who like kind of agree with me or want to follow me? I know they like sexy stuff too, but there's also like that aspect of like, you just got to be able to say what you want to say. And if people are going to like go towards it, then it's great. And I feel Twitter is a safer space for that, because Facebook would it's even on Instagram. I posted something once and I was getting attacked by my friends, and it's like, really? But like, I don't know. Twitter's just easier in that sense, I guess. So
Twitter is more the the unfiltered what's going on in my head, because as far as like Facebook and Instagram, like I have family and friends who are not into the political stuff, and or like, you know, friends from church stuff and work stuff, and they don't want to hear that stuff. So so I try to kind of, I guess, censor myself to an extent on Facebook, because I do know that like that's not what a lot of people are on Facebook for. Whereas on Twitter, I can just, it's a free for all. Like I can just go and do and be, and it's weird to think of it that way, but I mean, there's a lot of truth to it.
Yeah, there definitely is a difference, and I noticed it. And I feel much more like productive wasting time on Twitter than I did wasting time on Facebook. Even though on Facebook I had like my business page. That's the one terrible thing about being on Facebook, is it's free advertising if you play it right, you know. But so I've had to I have less business because I'm not on Facebook and stuff. But yeah, I had to censor myself anyways because my business was there and everything. But on Twitter, it's like say whatever, it's all good, and I say everything.
So touch on that, because you definitely do say everything. So what is the what's the motivating factor on some of the stuff? Like, do you ever just post to see how far you can go and get people to react, or
maybe not necessarily react, but I definitely want feedback. I definitely I'm like, okay, this thought is in my head. I need to work it out and be able to work it out in just these couple characters, and just to get feedback from people for sure. I try not to be too I mean, it's been hard this last year not to be an extremist or a radical, because everything is that now if you say anything, right? But I don't know about pushing, because I try not. I mean, I like the discussions that always lead to someone getting, called a pedophile. I like those type of discussions, but they're just so hard to have on social media. When you have them in person, it's totally different. But I don't know. I want a little bit of feedback, a little bit of okay, am I the only crazy person thinking this? And do other people understand what I'm trying to say? What am I seeing things completely wrong? So I guess I like it in that sense more than pushing people to react. Or I mean, that's why I do the sexy stuff, just because people will either hate that stuff and then they can unfollow me or whatever. That's how I push people away, or they love me for it. So whatever. But I don't know. I just have all these crazy thoughts. No, they're not even crazy thoughts. They're just normal thoughts, but you're not allowed to say them in a lot of circles. You're not allowed to say a lot of things in this world. And I'm kind of in a place in my life where I can't get canceled. Even if I got doxxed and someone found out who I was, I'm a realtor, finding out who I am is good PR. Every bad PR is good PR for me anyways. So I'm not worried about that. My life's set up. So I guess I just felt the freedom to just say it, which my life's kind of always been like that too, where I never had someone holding me down. I was never under anyone's thumb. I was on my own young, and I've just kind of been well, I'm going to do what I want and say what I want. So I don't know.
It's funny you bring up the doxing thing. I've got a couple buddies that I went to high school with that do a beer review YouTube channel, and they have a podcast, and so I took some beer from here down there and hung out with them one weekend, and we did a review on their YouTube for the YouTube channel, and then we did a podcast as well. And I'm terrible about doxing myself. I tell where I live and everything, tell my real name, all of it, all the time. And because I don't care. If somebody's ballsy enough to show up on my doorstep, that's not going to end well for them anyway. So I don't really care. I dox myself all the time, but they were super weird about it every time I would actually say where I lived and what I did and stuff like that. They're like, oh, don't dox yourself. I'm like I give a shit. So it's not something that concerns me. And I really do think a lot of people, I do understand some people have legitimate concerns depending on the field that they work in, or something that that could legitimately end their career, but for a lot of us, that's not the case. Like we like to have the anonymity, but at the same time, if somebody wants to show up at my house, I mean, I'll offer you a beer and we can sit down, or if you want to make it violent, then we can go that direction too. I'm cool with whatever. I mean, there's a big field back there that I can dig holes in, and I'm not too concerned. It's so I wanted to touch on the sexy stuff though. Do you think that women on Twitter have an advantage over men because of that aspect of things?
Yeah, I would say definitely for sure. But now that we've been into the social media world for a while, like plenty of men are sexy. Like y'all men are sexy too, and you can play it up as much as like I feel like yes, for sure, because I can post a hot picture and then like go off on the government or whatever. But I think men now can play with it because like there's plenty of hotties that I follow that I like specifically think they're hot and I enjoy what they say. And like I think it can turn around. It can like I don't know if you follow Unicorn Daddy. I mean like his butt's like I love that stuff. And so I think like yes, there's definitely an advantage being a woman just in general. Like there is woman privilege everywhere, and like you can be evil about it or you can use it for good. Like I think I've used it for good in my life, but like yeah, I think men could turn it around and use it more. But then it's also like then you can get into the deeper thing, like are we all just being narcissists and like like but I think we all have narcissistic traits and it's so hard not to anyway. So whatever. Give into it and use it for good.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's Twitter. We're all a bunch of narcissists just pretending not to be. or
Right.
Not even pretending not to be.
That's what I say. Like if you can be, you know what? All of us have psychopathic traits, probably. All of us have like these negative traits. It's just a matter of like working on them and not being that person completely, like and being well-rounded. And if you're well-rounded on like the negative traits, you can be well-rounded on the good traits too.
So that's I like that. I like that came up because I would like to talk about that and also like you do post regularly with the wording is going to sound terrible on this, but like with self-love stuff and not in like a sexual way, but like, loving yourself and who you are and the positive aspects about yourself. So on that topic, because yes, like you had said, we all do kind of have some sadistic traits, no matter how good a person you are. Like if there is a certain level of human nature that you're an awful son of a bitch somewhere deep down. And it may be really, really deep down and it might not be all that deep down, but somewhere in there, it's there. And like, that's just human nature, unfortunately. But, we all work to control that and suppress it and to be good people. And then, that also gets into the side of loving yourself and kind of having respect for yourself and the fact that you are fighting this battle every day. And most days you're winning, even if you don't feel like you are. So I talk about some of that side of stuff, like the having respect and love for yourself, because I really do appreciate that when you post that kind of stuff, especially on Twitter, because that's not the norm around there.
Well, just like how much you see people posting like their insecurities are coming through and you can just feel that. And all of us are humans. We've all been there. And I know like I spent the early part of my life feeling so insecure. And I don't know if it's nurture or nature or what, but just something in my head clicked. And I'm like, why am I like I was on the internet when it very first started pretty much, right? I was like getting called a butterface back in like 2005 on the internet. And like, eventually it's like, what? This person's not even showing their face or anything. So obviously, even if I'm not super gorgeous, I'm not like, we can't listen to people like that. Like, and I don't know if that's just an intuition thing or what, but like, yeah. And I just wish people could like, it's human to not have yourself accepted. I mean, well, I still go through days where I'm like, I don't accept myself. I'm being a piece of shit here, but like, it's like humans get stuck in this cycle where it's like they have to be something they're not. And we're in this society where you're constantly being told you shouldn't be what you are. You have to be this or that, fit into this box and fit into this box. So I understand it's hard for people. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm glad you pick up on that, because I do, like, people do just need to, like, it's just more like, stop. If you stop judging other people for the crap you're insecure about, then you stop being insecure about it. It's like, it's the cycle of like, oh, okay, I need to stop being shitty, and that'll help me feel less judged. And I don't know how you teach that, but I guess if I just keep doing what I'm doing, people are picking up on it. So
I would hope so. Like I said, I really appreciate that. I went through an interesting path of kind of self-discovery with I got divorced, and I had a lot of stuff that kind of went on in life for me during that time, and it kind of helped me to step back from like who I was and look at myself and figure out a lot of things that I was like really just a horrible person. Yeah, and kind of reconcile maybe my baser nature with the person that I realized I should have been, and maybe even the person that I was pretending to be versus the one that I actually was. And so having that about a year and a half to 2 years worth of kind of journey of figuring that stuff out and trying to become like a good husband and father type of person, it really opened my eyes up to see that kind of stuff, and the kind of the rawness of people opening up on social media with that kind of stuff. Like, I wish I knew how to respond better to it, because there is in our society, like you said, I mean, everybody's being suppressed to not be who they are, to fit this, mold of what politics is saying you should or shouldn't be to fit in. And it can weigh on people a lot, and I feel like people do need that outlet, and most people aren't going to go seek out counseling or anything. You're not going to go see a therapist. You're going to spout off on Twitter, and maybe people will think it's a funny joke and you're being facetious with it, but a lot of times that's people actually bearing their souls on stuff. And
that's true. And like you said, like, there was a point in your life where you had to go through that. You had to go through the surface. You had to dive below the surface, face like what people call your shadow side or your dark side. Like, you have to face that kind of stuff in life. And we have this society where people are refusing to face it. They're refusing to say they're a bad like all this, everybody's racist and stuff. All that is humans aren't saying, oh, I'm a bad person, I need to fix myself. Instead of that, they're calling everybody else racist or whatever. And it's like, that's why all this identity politics is so easy to take over these people, because they're just cruising along at the surface. Nothing they do is wrong or right. They're just doing whatever they're supposed to do in this like box that they're in. And then they get to this point where, okay, you have to face yourself at some point, and you have to be like, I did this shitty thing. And you will still do shitty things. You will still be a shitty person, but like, just this, yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, how like everybody's a white supremacist. And it's like, are you just trying to say everybody has some bad shit in them? Because that's true. It's like they're close, but they're so shallow that they can't like realize it's a person to person thing. It isn't this one thing that everybody, like, it's this racial superiority thing. Like, that's not what it is, but that's the cop out kind of, instead of saying, oh, I'm a shitty person. So I'm glad you went through that and became a better dad, I'm sure. And it's not taught, and most parents don't teach like introspection or like, I mean, I ran from home as soon as I could because my family was going through their own crap. And I'm like, I can't deal with your crap and me trying to like grow up and deal with my crap. And then I lucked out with a great boyfriend at the time, and he grew up with very introspective parents. So it was like great lessons in my life of like things to think about, like how many people are in their 40s in a relationship or dating and they can't even like do anything alone, or they can't like be home alone. Like they need that person with them all the time. And like there's all these lessons you should have learned early on of like how to be a human with another human. But if you never like dive below and get through it and like feel like crap and then come out ahead, and then then you get to be a dumb bitch like me. Like just do whatever and do and say whatever you want. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm glad you, like I said, glad you noticed. I'm glad you went through it. And it is, and it's hard because you can't force people to do it. You can't force people to do that. They could go to therapy for years and never once do that, Like therapy's great, but therapy isn't like it's not a medicine, or it's not like it takes people going home and thinking in their head and feeling like crap for a couple months or whatever to fix this thing. It's like that's another weird thing that's been going on with all this online therapy and stuff. I'm like, are we using it how it's supposed to be used? Or like, I don't know. There was that that comedian Ryan Long. I don't know if you've seen it. He had one where like it was a joke between a therapist, and the therapist was basically just validating them, like, oh yeah, you are like, you shouldn't have to fix yourself. You're perfect. Like going on like that.
And I feel like that's a problem with modern therapy, is it's not about figuring out what's wrong with you. It's about making you feel good about what's wrong with you. Like embracing, for lack of a better way of putting it, embracing the just utter piece of shit that you are and being your best self, as in like being more of a piece of shit, instead of actually digging in and figuring out like, why do I do this stuff? That's what it was for me. Like I had to really take a deep, hard look at myself and think like, why is it that literally every person that I see in my life, do I immediately start to identify their weaknesses and how I can manipulate and utilize them to get what I want out of this interaction? And I mean, that was what my social interactions really boiled down to for a good portion of my life. And sitting down and really looking at that. And I mean, it was, like I said, it was probably 1.5 to 2 years. And I wrote a memoir, more or less, like chronicling from the time I got out of high school up to that point in my life, like basically everything shitty that I could just remember having done, like where I deliberately manipulated and used people to benefit me and advance my career or whatever. And like, people don't want to look at that stuff because it's fucking gut wrenching. Like, to look at yourself and realize I have some major flaws, and then I have to fix those major flaws too. Like that's hard stuff, and people don't want to do hard stuff in this society.
Well, the surface is so much easier, and then you can see someone say something a little bit weird that you don't understand, and then you can call them the worst name, call them the worst names in the book and dox them or whatever. Like the doxing thing is kind of the same. They're these surface dwellers who like have no understanding of anything below or above, and they're just here and they're like, oh, that person said that, let's ruin their life over it. Whereas like they need to ruin their own life in a way. It's not like you're ruining your life, but you are ruining your ego and your yourself or your id or whatever they call it. And it's like they will refuse to do that, and they'll try and ruin other people's lives financially with their jobs or whatever, just so they don't have to like look at themselves. Like it's just wild, because it's so much easier when you can be like, yeah, you know what, I'm a piece of shit human and I do bad things sometimes, and like, but I'm actually a really nice human, on top of that, and I'm always working to be a good human, and I love people and people love me, and it's like, why do people want to stay in that? Like, I don't know. And like, but like we said, you can't force people out of it. So
yeah, I think that's the toughest thing. And like, none of that stuff is anything that I learned from my parents. Like my parents are both amazing, great people. Like I didn't pick up any of that stuff from them. Like that was stuff I learned on my own. And understanding that I was that way, kind of shaped who I have tried to become more of as a parent, so that I don't reflect that stuff to my kids. I try to reflect more of what I want them to grow up into, and hopefully not have to go through, all the stuff that I went through. And do you have kids? Or, I mean, you are Forrest mommy.
I'm the fake mommy. No kids, not gonna have kids. I have a ton of nieces and nephews. My sisters are way older than me and were having kids when I was in high school still. And I was just like, so I got to see it like up close and personal. And it was just like, and the pressure was never on me because they, my parents had grandkids like right away. So there was never that, like, that's part of like the whole nature thing, just where I'm the baby of the family and everyone's way older than me. And I'm just kind of like, I got to grow up in Colorado where my siblings did it, and like just all these different things. So that's why I'm kind of just, I don't know. I didn't have the pressures. But when you're the baby, you're spoiled anyways. But like, yeah, no kids. I try to be a very good influence on my nieces and nephews. I love my nieces and nephews. My partner has a bunch of nieces and nephews, and we love them and always supported them. Like, even when I was broke in my 20s, I was always buying my nieces and nephews presents and, being in their life as much as I could. My family didn't like me at that point, but we're all good now. Last year, COVID really brought us all closer together. They're like, oh, the crazy girl's actually not that crazy. So
yeah, all of your conspiracy theories start coming true, and everybody realizes, hey, we might want to keep her around. She might be onto something over there.
Yeah, maybe the government is kind of bad. Although I was laughing because my parents randomly took me to a Ross Perot rally in the early 90s. So like my parents they're not libertarian and they never were like Republican or anything, but I was raised more conservative Christian and all that. But it just makes me laugh all these last year, just thinking back on all these little things like I saw my parents, and I'm like, oh, so they were trying to like hold me in under the like conservative Christian, be a good girl thing. But then also they were like not following all the rules either as far as like with certain stuff. So I'm like, okay, I get some of it from you guys too. You just were a little more sneaky about it.
You're more openly rebellious.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So you did mention that you're a realtor. And
real estate broker. I'm not a realtor. I don't know. Do you know the difference between realtor and real estate broker?
For all the houses I've bought in moving to like 8 different states over the last 15 years, no, I don't know anything about any of that. I just buy a house that I think looks nice, and then
But it's good. I'm glad you do that. Real estate's the best thing to buy, in my opinion. But a realtor, so everyone messes it up anyways, but realtors are part of the National Association of Realtors, which is kind of like the lobby group, the union. It's the closest thing as that for independent contracting real estate agents. I actually am not part of it because you pay them like $700 a year and then they're like, oh, these people are more ethical because they pay us $700. I don't know. There's some perks to it. So I'm a Colorado licensed real estate broker, but everyone says realtor anyway. So that's like the big R. Like there's a big R logo. That's the NAR thing. Okay. I'm too independent for
that. Imagine that. So are you seeing some of the housing prices going nuts and people buying up stuff? Like, are you seeing that firsthand? Like, so I'm from Indiana, and here in our little more rural area, we're outside of town. So we have the highway, and we have good access to town. Like, I can be in town in 5 to 7 minutes, but at the same time, we're out in the county. So I really don't have a whole lot of restrictions. I've got a giant garden in my backyard, and like we can kind of do whatever we want. My neighbor at the end of the road, he gets out and starts shooting at 6 o'clock every morning, and he's driving me insane because I work night shift, so I get off at 4 in the morning, and he's out there just having a full-on like war with the trees or something. But he can do that because we live out in the middle of nowhere, and anytime a house comes up on the market out in this area, it's literally gone the next day. And usually they are getting double what I would have paid for the same house when I first moved into this area 6 years ago. So if only double, like it's been insane. Are you seeing stuff like that in that part of the country as well?
Oh yeah. So Colorado, so I got my license in 2015. Um, Pretty much as soon as Colorado legalized weed, things went balls to the wall. Like 100,000 people were moving here every year. So like we've been, and that was, we didn't get hit as bad in the '08 stuff in Colorado. Like our construction slowed down and stuff, but it wasn't as bad as it was in the East and whatnot. But like we were still building back up from that. And then we have all these people moving here. So it's like, for me, as long as I've been agent, like it's been nuts. It's just been nuts at every like price level too. Like, when I first started, I'm with people who are trying to get into their first home and stuff. And at that time, you have all the flippers who can throw cash at it and then like flip the house and sell it for like 50 grand more, blah, blah, blah. But then, this person would have bought it for the original price and fixed it up themselves. And it's an actual family. So that's been going on. And it's Colorado, like the house I grew up in, my parents, we moved out here in 1990, and Colorado was like the foreclosure capital of the world in the 90s, the late 80s and the 90s. Everything was so cheap out here. So the place my parents bought, which was awesome, it's 10 acres total and a nice custom home. And they bought it for $250 back in 1990, and it's worth well over $1 million now, which sucks for me because I'm buying it from them. But then it's also like, I get it because the location is beautiful and Colorado is just nuts. We are sprawling in every direction, even up to the mountains. Like you think, oh, you can't sprawl into the mountains, but they are doing tract homes literally up into the foot of the mountains and then going to the east because the east is flat. So they are just sprawling everywhere, and everywhere they can build. For the last couple of years, they've been building within the city. They're revamping everything and doing a lot of like multifamily stuff. And we still don't have enough houses. So I'm like, I don't understand it. Like I will never understand that from like even as a realtor. That doesn't make sense to me that we're building all these houses. People are selling. How is there still not enough houses? And how are these people like moving into Indiana and stuff? Like there's got to be empty houses somewhere. Like where are all these people moving from?
Right.
It's just wild.
Yeah. It's insane. My wife and I had when all this first started, really going nuts, we'd talked about like we could sell our house pretty easily for close to double what I paid for it initially. And but then she was like, yeah, but then where do we move? Because everything else is all right. Everything else is the exact same around here. Like if we wanted to upgrade to a slightly bigger house or, move to a nicer little subdivision or something like that, like, yeah, I could probably sell my house for 200, but it's going to cost me 250 or more to get into another one that's even, similar size. So it would be a waste of time. And yeah. And what's going on with all the houses that these people are moving out of to move into these? Because it's not like they're all coming out of apartments. Like a lot of them sold their house in town to buy a house out in the country. And so what's happening to these houses? It doesn't make any sense how there's always a shortage, but at the same time, there's always a very consistent turnover. And it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. The only thing I've been trying to push for the last couple years is co-living, just because out here in Colorado, especially like in between Colorado Springs and Denver, there's a county called Douglas County with just like, it's where Castle Pines is. I don't know if you've ever heard of Castle Pines, but like, it's loaded. It is just like the richest. It's like on the top 10 richest counties, like, and it has been since the 90s because of real estate, mainly people down there in the real estate going like crazy. But there are all these homes out there for sale between like 1 and 3 million on like nice 40-acre parcel, or on property, on land. and it's like they sit there forever to get sold because how many people are in that market, although it's going fast now, but it's like, why can't, I wish people could like live families or whatever, like a little more like multi-generational living. Like, it's so funny for how independent I am now. I'm like, oh, people should live with their families still. Like, you guys could garden. Like my parents and my sister might be buying a place down in South Carolina together, just like to have a home base down there, because I have a nephew and niece out that moved out that way. And it's like, oh, I love that idea. Like, everyone can live together. And like, I know it's such a weird thing, and like we all want to have our own things, but I'm like, why can't we, like, two people buy one of these places? These houses are huge. They're 8,000 square feet or more houses, and like you could easily revamp it to make it two living areas if you want it, and it's like, yeah, but it's like, because we don't have enough houses, so why can't people, we should be doing that. I know that sounds like socialism, communism, which if you want to do it at your own choice, like that's totally cool. And I love, especially now, with the whole doomy, like, like, oh, we're going to hell anyways, the world's crashing. You might as well shack up with some other people to have like a team, like to get through the end times together with.
Our little subdivision, there's several of us. So we have a nice little garden back here in our backyard, and I built a gazebo and a deck, and we put up a pool, and like we've got a nice little garden area. We've got a bunch of fruit trees. We got peaches, pears, plums, apples, and nectarines. I've got a giant raspberry, blackberry, and fig bush out here as well. So we've really kind of been cultivating the whole backyard garden as opposed to yard. And we've got goats and chickens, and like I grew up on a farm, so I'm a little bit of a redneck. And then we've got our neighbor who is just up the other side or behind us. They've got a nice giant garden. We've got another neighbor up the road that he's been doing like garden boxes. He doesn't have as much yard as we do, so he's been doing like the 5-gallon bucket gardens and like building his own box gardens and doing stuff like that, like around his house. So that's really cool. Like we've got a lot of people in our little neighborhood, and we also have a fairly tight little neighborhood. Like we all hang out and get along really well. So we all kind of garden together and share stuff. Like our squash absolutely went nuts. So we've been giving squash to the neighbors, and one of the guys, his cucumbers did really well. So, and ours died. So he's been giving us cucumbers, and we've been giving him squash, and we'll swap tomatoes and stuff every year. Like we grow a whole bunch of stuff, and then we kind of share, which, the ANCOM thing always gets derided, but I think the idea of anarcho-communism is like, it's actually looking at it from like a textbook manner, it would actually be the purest form of communism and something that would actually work, but it could only work in like a small setting, like our little neighborhood, or like you were saying, like people buying a 8,000 square foot house with 40 acres and, making it their own little hippie commune or whatever. Like I think it's an incredible idea, and I think it could be very productive and work. It's just not something that could ever be implemented on any sort of a large scale. Like, I don't know if it would work beyond like 20 people, but it's something that could work.
Voluntary. It has to be all voluntary. The community has to be, they have to choose to be part of that community, voluntary and stuff. But no, I'm with you. I'm all about it. Like, yeah, I agree. People give it such a that's why I try to say like anarchy, like people can still do their communism or socialism, or they can never talk to people ever again. Like that seems the most logically consistent of how the world should be organized, by people's voluntary associations. And if you're going to be in a community and help each other out, like that's productive. And we're like, no matter what you think, humans, we want to survive. That's our goal, is to survive, for people to like procreate, to have family. Like you can't like ignore that. But so like, why would you not like group up and make strong communities? But obviously the state has ruined that for a lot of people, but whatever.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Our Ancapistan and like dreams will happen one day, right?
I have a feeling it's going to take a massive collapse of the system, which then may very well be coming shortly down the road anyway. But yeah, hopefully we get there, at least in some degree or another.
Well, people will always bring up the like Swedish and the Nordic countries, and I'm like, you understand their like populations are 5 million, 6 million, and if you understand that, are you like pushing for that? Because most of us will agree with that. Yeah, let's split up into smaller like things like that, but they don't make that connection, of course.
Yeah, if we can break off and have our own nation state and do whatever we want and make it work, then cool. That I would love to, but there's no way that the federal government can't make that work. Not for 330 million people. Like
they want half of us dead anyways. Like, why don't you just let us leave? They're like, they wake up every day wishing everyone who thinks differently than them is dead, but then they don't want a national divorce. And it's like, okay, but that's logic, I guess.
Yeah. Crazy times that we're living in. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I think this has been an excellent conversation for my end. I've had a lot of fun, and I think we really got to get into some of the deeper stuff that I appreciate about your posts that like might not get more as much attention, but like I really have a great appreciation for that stuff. So,
well, thank you. Thanks for the appreciation, and thanks for inviting me on, getting me to. I need to be more technological and do this more, but it's hard. I'm the worst millennial ever. Like, I used to love technology, it would on computers all the time, and now I'm like, I don't even like want to get like I don't want to do anything with technology other than like my phone.
and even with that, it's pretty basic. I've got the iPhone 4, I think it is. I can't remember what it is. It's one of those single digit numbers that came out a long time ago.
Hey, it works. If it works, it works.
That's right. Well, thank you very much for coming on with me. Anything you want to pitch or plug and before we get out of here?
Nope, just Forest Mommy on Twitter. Follow me, hit me up. That's all. Or if you're moving to Colorado, call me and you need a broker. I give money I make, I give right back to the state of, not the state of Colorado, but I do help protect Colorado's like nature and land conservation. So I try to like throw that out there. It's my status side, but it's important to me. So
hey, that's awesome.
That's all I got.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you.